All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. A big day. First of all, you know it's a big day because I'm using one of my few dress shirts today. So you know it's a big event. So we got the normal show, of course, right now to 7 o'clock. Then we've got a special hour-long post-game we're sharing with everyone. Drums, rare time that you don't have to be a member to get it. On top of that, the return of Old School tonight at 8 o'clock. Just keep on rolling. By the way, again, rare situation where Old School will be available to everyone free the whole show. The return of the legendary Old School. I'm not saying anything except for the things that I've said. And then we go to our Wisconsin coverage. Blood on the hands of the Republican Party. We'll discuss it a little bit later in this program and in the coverage as well. How they force people to the polls to grab more power. We'll have pictures for you as well and video from how it's going. So don't. And obviously, there's Bernie versus Biden. Might be the last primary. That's real. So we got a lot to talk about in that regard as well. And in the very last half hour of the program, will be for just members. Okay, so big day ahead. And of course, we could do all this because of you guys, tyt.com/go. If it wasn't for you guys, we couldn't put any of this on. And yes, at a moment like this, really need the help here, guys, as most small businesses do. So let's just take a quick look at the thermometer at tyt.com. 75,000. Awesome. Amazing. Great. I know it's insane. Can I see 100,000 before the end of this gigantic day? I don't know. We're going to find out. Are people still buzzing about my haircut? I don't know. I guess so. We're going to find out. All right, Casper, take it away.
This memo was circulated pretty widely within the West Wing. We don't know whether the president saw it. His aides and Peter Navarro declined to get back to us, but it does indicate that at the upper levels of government, at least some officials were aware in late January that something bad could be coming to the U.S. at a time when the president was downplaying it.
That was Maggie Haberman with the New York Times reporting on a story that she recently published regarding two different memos that Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, had sent the administration, one in late June, the second one in mid-February, indicating that the coronavirus would be a complete and utter disaster and that the administration needed to act immediately. So this was obviously a memo or two memos that have been leaked to the New York Times. I have some suspicion that it was leaked by Peter Navarro himself, but we'll get to that in just a second. First, what did Navarro warn the administration about? According to Haberman's reporting, the warning written in a memo by Peter Navarro in that letter, President Trump's trade advisor, he's the highest level alert known to have circulated inside the West Wing as the administration was, learning about COVID-19. Now, with the subject line, impose travel ban on China, Navarro opened the memo by writing, quote, if the probability of a pandemic is greater than roughly 1%, a game theoretic analysis of the coronavirus indicates the clear dominant strategy is an immediate travel ban on China. So this is from his first memo. He was already urging the administration to ban travel from China. Now, keep in mind that Navarro is a bit of a China hawk. So people were apparently dismissive of him, thinking that he was just trying to retaliate against China. But he continues to write, the lack of immune protection or an existing cure or vaccine would leave Americans defenseless in the case of a full-blown coronavirus outbreak on U.S. soil. The lack of protection elevates the risk of the coronavirus evolving into a full-blown pandemic, imperiling the lives of millions of Americans. He also cautioned that it was, quote, unlikely the introduction of the coronavirus into the U.S. population in significant numbers will mimic a seasonal flu event with relatively low contagion and mortality rates. So in that portion of the memo, he was essentially telling the administration, look, don't mistake this for the common flu. This is much more serious and we need to act immediately. And he also wrote, risk of a worst case pandemic scenario should not be overlooked, given the information coming from China. There's more, but Cenk, jump in.
Yeah. So I agree with you, Anna. I think that after Navarro got beaten up a little bit in the press yesterday and people were making fun of him saying He doesn't necessarily have the qualifications to be able to offer up a medical opinion on this. I would be really surprised if it wasn't his team that leaked this memo to the press going, oh, yeah, well, who was on it first and who was most accurate about it? Now, to give Navarro credit, he was. Not that he was necessarily first. And by the way, Dr. Fauci had similar warnings on the same exact day, January 29th. But give him credit. And then I talked about this yesterday. And, I got some blowback from some of our audience, too, saying, look, you don't have to be a doctor to understand when doctors summarize findings and understand the urgency of matters. And we're all, able to read those reports. That doesn't mean we can diagnose people. It doesn't mean we're people who can practice medicine and tell patients what to do. But you can tell if something is serious or not serious. And so in that brief way I defended Navarro, I think he did a bunch of other ridiculous things that we talked about yesterday. And it turns out he did largely have it right. Having read a lot of those warnings in that January 29th memo and the February 23rd memo, he was prescient. And so, look, a lot of scientists already believe that. That's where he got the information in the first place. But in a Trump administration, when someone clears the bar of listens to scientists and is a rational person, it's usually a big surprise, big news event. And, of course, the second part of this is deeply embarrassing to Donald Trump because his own administration and a guy he really likes in Navarro warned him about this. And he did very, very, very little. And so I don't know if it embarrasses him enough that Navarro should now be worried about his job. He's a huge Trump supporter, a massive right winger. But if you embarrass the president once, that might be good night, Irene.
So I paid close attention to the details in the reporting because there were a few signs that I think we should all be aware of. First of all, multiple points in the article indicates that there's no indication or proof that Trump himself read the memo or the memos. It indicates that while it was sent to administration officials, again, there's no proof that Trump saw it. So that's one of the other reasons why I think Navarro fed this story to the New York Times, because Navarro's target isn't Trump. He doesn't want to embarrass Trump. Navarro's target is Anthony Fauci. And if you pay close attention, in the article, they're specific in calling Fauci out for his disagreement with Navarro, not only on hydroxychloroquine, which Fauci says there isn't enough scientific evidence in favor of, but in the issue of the travel ban, because Navarro was very forceful in indicating that we needed to halt travel from China early on, whereas Fauci was a little more resistant to that. And it's written in the article itself. So I'm going to go ahead toward the end of the graphics. This is the very last one, Brett. Navarro was at odds with medical experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci, who had argued that such travel bans only delay the eventual spread. Why do you think that portion of the article was included, that mention of Fauci? I mean, and look, I'm not saying that Maggie Haberman is, colluding with Navarro in putting this story together to make Fauci look bad. But what I do know is that a lot of reporters get played by government officials. And I think that that's what happened here.
No.
Just keeping it real.
No, I actually, apparently I'm going to go further than you. No, I am saying that. Of course, Haberman is giving positive coverage to the person who leaked the story to her. That's actually very well-known tactic among reporters in Washington. I don't know any reporter with a straight face that would deny that. I'm sure in public they would deny it. But yeah, if you give them a story, they're going to write it from your point of view. So you're 100% right in noticing that. I noticed the same thing, Anna. It was like, a couple of random pot shots at Anthony Fauci. That's Haberman saying here, presumably Navarro or whoever leaked it to her, I'm doing you a solid. You want to hit Fauci? I hit Fauci in the article, okay? And you want to protect Trump? I'll say several times that he didn't necessarily read it. He didn't necessarily, which, by the way, is not, to me, any sign of good leadership. But it was very careful to point that out. So it seemed like another reason, clearly from Navarro or Navarro's camp, And yeah, that's Haberman doing them a solid because they're doing her a solid. They could have leaked to the Washington Post or the New York Times. They leak it to her. She writes it from their point of view. Keep it real. That's
Right.
exactly what happened. Now,
And I want to be
the quotes from
real
the memo are just, Anna, sorry. Having said that, the quotes from the memo are real. And so I'm getting past that and saying still Navarro was right about it back then.
Okay, so I also want to just emphasize that everyone's a bad guy in this story, including Peter Navarro himself, because he is apparently fully aware of the severity of COVID-19 well before the general public is. And for months, he shared that information with the Trump administration, but he didn't feel the need or the urgency to share that information with the American people, which I would argue is incredibly critical in saving people's lives. And for months, the Trump administration downplayed the severity of COVID-19 for months. In fact, I agree with you, Cenk. Trump possibly not having read these two memos is not an excuse. That is not something that we can point to and say, no, Trump's not a bad guy. He's supposed to be a leader. What's the point of him having these advisors in his administration in the first place if he's not going to read their memos or their advice? And so I want to just quickly go to this compilation video because it'll show you, with dates included, all the different times throughout the last several months that Donald Trump downplayed the severity of COVID-19.
We think we have it very well under control. We pretty much shut it down coming in from China. Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat. So we're in very good shape, very well under control in our country. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. But we have it so well under control. And we only have 15 people, and they're getting better. Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. And this is their new hoax. You take a solid flu vaccine, you don't think that would have an impact or much of an impact on corona? No.
If, we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by sitting around and even going to work. Some of them go to work.
Have to be calm. It'll go away. We're doing very well, and we've done a fantastic job with respect to that subject on the virus.
I have a feeling that a lot of the numbers that are being said in some areas are just bigger than they're going to be.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Yeah. So first of all, I can't stand to listen to him anymore. I know it's my job, but he's so transparently insecure. He has paper thin skin. An egomaniac, narcissist. All he cares about is, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Can you believe how great I'm handling corona? There is no coronavirus. Reelect me. There is no corona. Don't worry about it. It's going to be 0 cases. I mean, you saw it with your own eyes there. That entire time, that's why the dates are on there. The entire time, his own government, one of his top advisors, was basically screaming from the rooftops, this is going to be terrible. We got to get ready. And they would not get ready. All the way to mid-March, they had not ordered to test the masks, etc. Trump is a total incompetent buffoon. If you've ever run an organization, you don't even need to run an organization. If you report to anybody and you tell them, oh, no, I had the reports that could have fixed this, but I didn't bother reading them because I basically wanted to cover my ass. What do you think would happen? In any other circumstance, you'd be fired. Even if the job wasn't that important, you'd be fired, let alone if the job was to protect the lives of tens and hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Well, you're right. He definitely doesn't like to be held accountable for anything. And this next story is just more evidence of that. So let's get right to it.
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay?
That was Donald Trump during his COVID-19 presser yesterday. And he was pretty vicious to reporters because one of the big stories was that a new Health and Human Services report indicates that the Trump administration was woefully unprepared and left the country woefully vulnerable to COVID-19. We have now passed more than 12,000 deaths in the U.S. As a result of COVID-19. And Trump doesn't like this new Inspector General report within the Department of Health and Human Services. So it was done by Christy Grimm, who's actually been working for the federal government since 1999. She was appointed by the Trump administration for her current role as the Inspector General in the Health and Human Services Department. And so she and the researchers went and spoke to hospital administrators to see what their experiences have been as a result of Trump's leadership or lack of leadership. And they found that one administrator told Health and Human Services that the supplies the hospitals received won't even last a day. So it was a scathing report, and Trump was asked questions about it by reporters during his presser, and he just absolutely lost it, including on John Carl, a reporter with ABC News. So I have more details of the report for you, Cenk, but I wanted you to jump in.
Yeah, so they looked at the report from 323 hospitals, and it was actually before the virus became even more out of control. The dates on it were March 23rd to March 27th. So this isn't political. They're just simply talking to the hospitals. Do you have what you need or don't you? The hospital isn't going to say, I don't have enough masks when they do, to do a gotcha of Donald Trump. They don't have time for that stuff. And so nobody knows who voted for who out of the 323 hospitals that they asked for. They ask them and they say, we have enough masks or we don't have enough masks. And they move on. So these are facts. And that's what an inspector general is supposed to do. They're supposed to uncover facts and see, hey, did we do a good job of responding or didn't we? And it's not to embarrass anyone. Otherwise, the government would never have it. It's to fix things. Hey, here's what went wrong, and this is super important, and lives are on the line. So for the next period of time, let's make sure we fix it, because we're in the middle of it right now, let alone the next crisis that happens. But Trump doesn't understand that, because he thinks, I don't really care about your lives. The only thing that matters is my reputation. So he perceives it as not something to fix, but something to deflect and bury and attack, because it dared, in his mind, criticize it.
Exactly. So the report also indicated, again, after interviewing hospital administrators, one health system reported it had received 1,000 masks from the federal and state governments, but it had been expecting a larger resupply. Further, 500 of the masks were for children and therefore unusable for the health system's adult staff. One hospital reported receiving a shipment of 2,300 N95 masks from the state strategic reserve, but the masks were not usable because the elastic bands had dry rotted. And so understandably, I mean, the whole point of doing these coronavirus press conferences is to answer questions that journalists and the general public have about our preparedness, which direction the country is going in. And what you're about to watch is a Fox News reporter asking Trump about this Inspector General report, and just pay attention to the way he treats her.
The number one complaint from those hospitals were severe shortages of testing supplies and a really long wait time. I mean, a week or longer.
And did I hear the word Inspector General? Really? It's wrong. And they'll talk to you about it. It's wrong.
But this is your own government.
Well, where did he come from, the Inspector General? What's his name?
It came from the Inspector General
what's his
report.
name?
I don't know his name off the top
Find me
of
his
my
name.
head.
Let me know, okay? If you find me his name, I'd appreciate it.
But, sir, these are hospitals.
All I can tell you is
not,
this:
sir,
we put up on the board. You're going to ask the admiral, but
these are
we are
hospitals
doing.
who say that they're waiting a week or longer to get their
Speak to
test
the
results.
admiral.
Why?
But we've
is it
done
still
more
taking so
testing
long?
and had more results than any country anywhere in the world. They're doing an incredible job. Now they're all calling us. They want our testing. What are we doing? How do you do the 5-minute test? How do you do the 15-minute test? So give me the name of the Inspector General. Could politics be entered into that?
So he should know the name of the Inspector General, who is not a man, actually a woman, Christy Grimm. And the reason why he should know who the Inspector General is in the Health and Human Services Department is because he appointed her for that position, to be the Inspector General. So it's incredible that he just dismisses that question by making it appear as though Christy Grimm is just some partisan hack who's looking to embarrass him, when that is just not the case.
Okay, so first of all, it's your government. What? Hey, why are you asking a reporter who your inspector general is at HHS? Why don't you ask one of your staffers? I'm not saying you got to know it off the top of your head. What are you asking the reporter for? It's your government. She's supposed to be asking you questions, holding you accountable. That's the job of the press. And he thinks holding you, the president, accountable is unacceptable because he's a wannabe dictator. So in a democracy, we hold our leaders accountable, and our leaders serve us. He's never understood that, doesn't care about it, doesn't want it. He just thinks, you're annoying me with questions about regular human beings who I obviously don't care about. This is all about me, so don't embarrass me. You're Fox News. You're supposed to do as you're told, okay, and try to put me in a positive light, which is near impossible to begin with. But did he seem at all concerned in that answer about the fact that the hospitals have shortages?
Of course not.
No, it's all about how does it make me look? How does it make me look, right? The reality is, look, you could have a couple of shipments that went awry. You could have some that were in the reserves, and that's why they had dry rot, because they stayed in there too long. They got some masks from 2010. Hey, you know what? That happens sometimes in the middle of an emergency. Those are normal things. But for 323 hospitals, overall, to report, they've got massive shortages. That is not a thing about Donald Trump. Eventually, I mean, look, it's about him in the sense that he's terrible at this. He cannot manage. He cannot manage. And there should be accountability for that in an election, okay? But for the moment being, the most important thing is, God damn it, are you going to get him the mask? Are you going to do anything to get him the mask? But he doesn't care about the mask. He doesn't care about the patients or the doctors or the nurses. It's all about him. I can't stand the guy anymore. And I can't see how anybody could look at those press conferences and not think, weak, pathetic, insecure little child.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do see that. And that's part of the reason why a lot of different news outlets have reconsidered just airing his pressers live. But I do want to get to the final video of John Karl. That was the ABC News reporter that we had shown you a clip of earlier. He wanted to follow up on the Health and Human Services report, and it did not go over well. Take a look.
How long has that person been in government?
Did serve in the previous administration.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I see. You didn't tell me that, John. You didn't tell me that. Did serve in the previous administration. You mean the Obama administration. Thank you for telling me that. See, there's a typical fake news deal.
You asked me when she was appointed. I told you when she was appointed.
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay? You asked me, you said, sir, just got appointed. Take a look at what you said now. I said, when did this person, how long in government? Well, it was appointed in the Obama administration.
So Christy Smith, again, is a nonpartisan, has been working for the federal government since 1999 during the Clinton administration.
And the Bush administration, and Obama, and Trump. She's worked under Republicans and Democrats. So you know why Trump has that assumption? Because that's how he operates. Every single person he's appointed is a hack whose only job is to kiss Donald Trump's ass, not to serve the American people. So he assumes that Obama, Bush, Clinton, they all did the same thing. They appointed lackeys whose job was to grovel at their feet and do their political bidding. The idea of hiring someone because they're competent, it's never crossed Donald Trump's mind. So why would anybody do that? Who cares if they do the job right? The question is, are they going to help me market me, or are they not? So and he says, oh, you're never going to get anywhere, he said at some point to Jonathan Karl in that exchange. He's a reporter at the White House. As far as reporters go, that's near the top, okay? Now, you could have different opinions on Jonathan Karl on other issues, but to say he's a third-rate reporter who didn't get anywhere, it's not really how it works. He's right there asking the president of the United States a question. So he got somewhere. Look, there's a million legitimate critiques of the national media, and we do it every day on the show. But yelling at a reporter that he's a third-rate reporter because he asked you a question about shortages of medical supplies in the middle of a pandemic is not one of the legitimate critiques of the media. That's just, as usual, being an insecure little brat.
Well, we have some more news to share with you that just shows how much Trump hates being held accountable. Our favorite segment, As the White House Turns, returns. So we'll have that story and more for you when we come back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks, guys. So we've got a lot of your comments. I can only read a couple of them. Apparently, a lot of folks have birthdays. I bathe in Jim Jordan's tears, writes in. My 54th birthday today. My wife asked what I wanted for my birthday. I told her $100 to TYT.com/go. Thanks for all you do. Stay strong. Wow.
Oh, thank you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, brother. And enjoy Jim Jordan's tears. Thank you. We really, really appreciate the love you guys give us. Tamara says, Cenk, for my birthday, could you please give us at least one? Of course. Oh, my God, I just did. And a have at it, Hoss. Again, you guys keep me stable. Love to Anna. Thank you. Love to you. Thank you. Thank you for being a member. So Lexi Hidrobo says, thank you for keeping me informed. I'm a grad student. I've gotten into politics within the last few years just from listening to TYT. I know it's a hard time, so I hope this little donation on top of my membership helps. It does, Lexi. You're the best. So when you use YouTube Super Chat, that also helps the show. TYT.com/join us to become a member. We've got a giant show ahead for you guys today. And, of course, TYT.com/go to help Young Turks remain sustainable. Last one, David Schatz, MD, uses YouTube Super Chat as well to say this. I'm a physician. Cenk is absolutely correct. While many aspects of medicine are complex, some matters are common sense or certainly can be opined on without an MD. If a bone is sticking out of an arm, chances are it's broken. So now, obviously, coronavirus is a little bit more complicated than that. But yes, we can read studies on it, and some people come to correct conclusions, some people come to clownish conclusions, and it might partly be based on their motivations. Like Trump doesn't care about the science; his motivation is Trump, so that's why he comes at it from a little bit different direction. And on Twitter, Jeff Horton, thank you for your contribution too. Really appreciate it, brother. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. Donald Trump has replaced the acting Pentagon Inspector General, who is actually the top watchdog for the $2 trillion in taxpayer money that's been allocated for the COVID-19 stimulus bill. Now, General Glenn Fine was replaced by the current EPA Inspector General, Sean O'Donnell. So he will be the acting Inspector General for the DOD. However, Trump has also nominated someone who needs to be confirmed by the Senate. Jason Abend is his name. And so I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more about him. But here's what we do know. Trump was very critical of a provision that Democrats demanded in the stimulus bill that would basically provide some oversight and some transparency in how those funds, the $2 trillion, will be given to various businesses and corporations. Trump was clear that he didn't like that, and he went ahead and replaced the top watchdog who was given that role, given that position. Now, General Glenn Fine had been selected by fellow inspectors general to chair the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. The inspectors general created the committee to oversee the roughly $2 trillion stimulus deal passed last month by Congress and signed into law by Trump to mitigate the economic damage caused by the pandemic. The committee chairman was given the power to issue subpoenas and investigate officials inside and out of government. Look, this is the biggest stimulus package that's ever been passed by Congress, even though the number is constantly reported as a $2 trillion stimulus deal. When you consider how much corporations can be bailed out, Trump himself admits that it could be as much as $6 trillion in taxpayer money, which is why it's so important to have a watchdog, an actual watchdog who isn't just a Trump loyalist who will cover up for his misappropriation of funds.
So this is why I didn't want Biden, among the reasons why. You're thinking, what? What does Biden have to do with this? Well, so what Trump is basically doing here is he's putting on a mask. He, in this case, gets to fire the cop guarding the bank. He's walking into the bank and putting in a fake cop. You know what's going to happen? Everybody knows what's going to happen. A robbery is going to happen, right? So if a Democrat wins office next time, beats Trump, and is president, the very first thing they should do is inspect the inspector general, the one that is being put in now, that is almost certainly a fake cop, a lackey of Trump. I don't know if he's his gardener, if he's his waiter. I don't know what he is, okay? But Trump is picking people based on loyalty. Are you going to allow me to do my criminal enterprise or are you not? And he's firing any inspector general that'll do their job. So apparently Fine must be a really good guy because he didn't even get a chance. Trump must know, oh, this is an upstanding person. This is a person who has ethics. So he's got to go. He's got to go. I can't have him there. There's almost definitely going to be a robbery. He's got $6 trillion there. He said, oh, no, I promise it won't go to my businesses or my family's businesses. You don't preemptively fire the inspector general and putting your own lackey into that role if you ain't going to rob it for your own purposes.
Right. And what he's doing in naming Sean O'Donnell as the acting inspector general for the Department of Defense is, keep in mind, O'Donnell is supposed to be the inspector general for the EPA. Trump doesn't even think the EPA should exist. I mean, he's been rolling back environmental protections since the moment he was inaugurated. And so this weakens Sean O'Donnell's ability or capacity to serve as an effective IG for the EPA. But also, I mean, when you really think about it, the EPA during COVID-19 has decided to give all these corporations a pass when it comes to environmental protections and oversight. So when it comes to certain behaviors or activities from polluting corporations, they've been told, hey, rest assured, during the coronavirus, you don't have to worry about us keeping a close eye on you. So he was weak, Sean O'Donnell was, as the inspector general for the EPA in the first place. Now splitting his time between the Department of Defense and the EPA is a recipe for disaster for the American people, but certainly what someone like Donald Trump would want.
So wait a minute. Why Biden, though? What's my bone to pick there? Because if Biden wins, you think he's going to go and look to see if the inspector generals robbed the place or not, or allowed the robbery to happen more accurately? He ain't going to do that. You think he's going to hold Republicans accountable after the fact? No way. No way. He's just going to, oh, hey, we don't look backwards. We look forwards. And if Trump and his family took a couple $100 million off the table and we don't look backwards, I love working with the Republicans. Are we ever going to have a strong Democrat again in this country? Because if you had a strong Democrat and Trump tried to sneak something in there that benefits him or Kushner or someone else, you'd find it. If that happens, you would find it, and there should be legal consequences. But Trump knows he could willy-nilly rob the place, and ain't no Democrat going to do a goddamn thing about it.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a pretty crazy video featuring Dr. Deborah Birx, opening up with everyone about the importance of social distancing and how it's affected her life. And Trump's reaction to her will just blow your mind. So we'll be back with that video and more.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your active ID more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. Big show today, Wisconsin primary, old school, free post game. Don't miss it. We're here all day. Thanks to you guys. Now, one of the folks that we want to thank and encourage you to be part of is our affiliate program. These are the folks that are Young Turks viewers, members, etc., that sell membership to other folks and make commission off of it. That's why we call it tyt.com/win-win. We win, progressive message gets out more, so progressives win. And yes, in this case, you make 20%, and it's a little side money. When I was running, and maybe I'll save this story for the post game, there was another candidate who kept talking about, you got to have a side hustle. Got to have a side hustle. So maybe tyt.com/win-win is it. There's 917 TYT affiliates already. They're not playing, man. Get out there and let's do this together. Now, speaking of win-wins, of course, that reminds me of aspiration.com/TYT. I've got an account. You should have an account. It took me 2.5 minutes or so. Super easy to get it. Throw some money in there. Every time you spend money, they plant trees. They're crazy. They're crazy progressives. They don't put any of your money in fossil fuel. They give you great rates, and you're planting trees left and right. Okay, so check it out, aspiration.com/TYT. I'm going to do one more plug because, one, it's the right thing to do. 2, Kitty Pack mentions it in the members section. Speaking of birthdays, it's Mike Minetta's too. That's right. So Mike is the executive director of Wolfpack. And in very Wolfpackian way, he has asked that for his birthday, you get membership at Wolfpack. Okay, they're trying to actually get to 2,500 members. It's not that lofty a goal. They only need 200 more. We can make that happen. We have got to get money out of politics. Look, let's keep it real. My race didn't work. Part of it was to help to get money out of politics, but that's Wolfpack's main mission. So this is a great time to help them. So it's wolf-pack.com/join. wolf-pack.com/join. Do it for Mike. And we're all getting old, man. I'm going to keep it real, Mike. You're 43, brother. You're getting old. Okay?
Okay.
Guys running across the country. All right. Go. All right, go. Forget it. Rest of you, I love you. Anna's got to go.
All right. Dr. Deborah Birx wanted to empathize with all the Americans who are really struggling with social distancing related to COVID-19. This is something that all of us can definitely relate to. We miss our families. We miss their touch, their affection. And so in an effort to encourage people to continue the practice of social distancing, to continue slowing the spread of COVID-19, Dr. Birx shared a personal story. But pay attention to how Trump handled it.
We need to take care of each other now as Americans and do everything that's in those guidelines. And I know they're tough. I know incredibly how tough they are. My grandchild of 10 months got a fever of 105 this weekend. I'm the doctor, and I couldn't get there. I mean, so I'm trying to explain to my daughter how to listen to her lungs, how to listen to her lungs, so and then the baby's lungs.
You did not get there?
I did not go there.
Good, I'm very happy with that.
Because of you two. I mean, when you can't take that kind of risk with the leaders of the country.
Your grandson's okay?
So, daughter, but she's coming out.
That's a lot of temperature, 105.
Yes. But, we're all, and that's just an illustration that I know you all are making sacrifices. And I guess I want everyone to take this seriously.
So I do want to note that her 10-month-old granddaughter is doing fine. Her temperature went down. Her granddaughter did not have COVID-19. It was a common illness that babies usually get, but she's recovering, so everything's okay. But I mean, just pay attention to how unbelievably heartless Trump's reaction to that is. I don't get it.
Yeah. Look, that snapshot right there, I'm worried my 10-month-old granddaughter's going to die. Hey, you didn't go, did you? Because we're talking about me, right? Me. 10-month-old, whatever, okay? I don't want to overstate it because he's half kidding. This is the kind of thing where my wife's like, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. Okay. But of course, the MAGA guys are like, no way, man. He's like the funniest guy in the world. That's why it's funny to talk about the 10-month-old dying. Who cares? It's all about Trump. Anyway, but to be fair to Trump, he at least had enough sense later, as you saw in the clip, to say, is the kid okay? If he hadn't, I was going to say, Jesus Christ, the empathy of a serial killer.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. And I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into body language. I don't want to be some ridiculous, hacky body language expert. But Dr. Birx always seems pretty uncomfortable and almost even irritated around Trump. And she's done some, Trump apologist nonsense that I don't agree with. But I mean, I don't think anyone can spend that much time with someone like Donald Trump and not become increasingly irritated at his juvenile behavior and his unwillingness to ever empathize with anyone or put himself in anyone else's shoes. He just doesn't care about anyone else's pain and suffering. You're right. He just cares about himself.
Yeah.
All right.
I know it's a small little story, but look, if somebody you knew had a granddaughter who had incredibly high fever, I would hope that your heart would break for them. You would really care. And look, I don't know how the conservative mind works. Maybe they're in a room with Trump and think, oh, yeah, this kind of insecure, bratish behavior is awesome. But I don't think so. I think even for most of them that are in government and for almost everybody who's left, it's like, oh, my God, that guy was crazy, right? And they didn't expect him to be as bad as he actually is because they apparently can't pay attention. But, yeah, if she's anywhere near rational, of course Donald Trump is going to grate on every nerve she has, because he would to any decent human being, even if you're a right winger.
Well, let's move on to some other news today, because what's happening in Wisconsin should be considered an outrage among everyone. But unfortunately, among Republicans, this is just another day of disenfranchising voters. So Wisconsin is holding its elections today thanks to a partisan Supreme Court ruling. And I'm not talking about the state Supreme Court. I'm talking about our Supreme Court weighing in and essentially undermining our democratic process while rigging the election in the favor of Republicans in the state. So not only were Wisconsin voters forced to go to the polls today, despite the ongoing pandemic that has claimed the lives of more than 12,000 Americans at this point, the Supreme Court ruled that absentee ballots will not receive an extension. This is what Democrats wanted in the very least. And the Supreme Court, in a partisan ruling, said, no, you can't even get an extension for absentee ballots. Democrats hope to defend a lower court order that allowed absentee ballots to be counted so long as they arrived at the designated polling place by April 13th, an extension granted by a judge to account for the brewing coronavirus-sparked chaos on Election Day, April 7th. Republicans, though, successfully asked the court to require these ballots to be postmarked by April 7th. All 5 of the court's Republicans voted for the Republican Party's position. All 4 of the court's Democrats voted for the Democratic Party's position. And so how did this get to the Supreme Court in the first place? Well, look, tens of thousands of voters in Wisconsin haven't even received their absentee ballots yet. They have not received their absentee ballots yet. They're expected to receive them after today, after Election Day. And so Judge William Conley ordered the deadline for receiving the ballots to be extended to 4 p.m. on April 13th. In response to the order, the Republican Party asked the Supreme Court to modify Conley's decision to require all ballots to be postmarked by April 7th, or they will not be counted. The Supreme Court's Republican majority granted the GOP this very specific request.
So, look, there's this mythology that the Supreme Court, as Chief Justice Roberts said in his confirmation hearings, just calls balls and strikes. We're not partisan. We don't care about politics. Politics, what name so? Republican Party, Democratic Party, I don't know. Can't tell. And then conveniently, hey, look at that. The 4 Democrats vote with the Democratic Party and the 5 Republicans vote with the Republican Party. What an unbelievable coincidence for the 100th time in a row. So who's right, who's wrong here? Well, look, Republicans look to block votes. That's what they do. If you're a fair and objective reporter, you call out the situation for what it is. So in this case, let's look at the numbers. So normally in an election like this, Wisconsin gets about 250,000 mail-in ballots. Everybody else goes to the polls. Very, very normal. In this election, because of coronavirus, they have asked for 1.2 million ballots instead of 250,000, because everybody wants to write it in and send it in, mail it in, right? Because they don't want to go and interact with other people. They want to do social distancing. They want to be safe. Makes sense. The problem is a lot of the ballots haven't even been received yet. Anna told you about that. But we know for a fact that at least 12,000 were still not mailed out on Sunday. So the election is on Tuesday, which is today. So very likely thousands upon thousands of people will not even receive their ballots and will have no chance to vote unless they want to go risk their lives. And if you're older, and a lot of the voters are older, it's an even greater risk to your life. So
no, this is insanity, because if people are defiant and they want their vote to matter, they're going to show up and they're literally going to risk their lives. OK, by the way, because of the fact that so many poll workers decided that they would not show up because they didn't want to risk their own lives, a number of polling places were shut down. And so the remaining polling places that were open now have way more individuals voting than is considered normal. And so you see these videos with lines, lines out the door, wrapping around entire blocks because people are unable to vote in their normal polling place. This is crazy. This doesn't just disenfranchise the 12,000 individuals who didn't even receive their absentee ballots yet. It disenfranchises pretty much every voter who hasn't been able to turn in an absentee ballot yet, because it's increasingly difficult to even cast a ballot in person while you're simultaneously risking your life.
So the video we just showed you is from Waukesha County, and that's actually relevant to this story in a couple of different ways. So why don't the Republicans want more people to vote? Well, first of all, just as a general matter, studies have shown that the more people who vote, the higher the chances are that the Democrats win. So Republicans love suppressing votes. And I get it if you don't care about democracy, you don't care about what's fair or right or ethical, and all you care about is winning and raw power. If you're a Republican, according to the studies, you should try to limit Black people, young people, Latinos, women, etc. from voting. So that's what they do. And so it is deeply unethical.
Cenk, you're absolutely right. I want to provide evidence of that, because if you can remember, just last week, Trump said the quiet parts out loud again. He admitted that if Democrats succeeded in accomplishing the election reforms that they demanded in the stimulus package, then Republicans would have a tough time. Don't believe me? Here was what he said. Here's the actual video.
I will tell you this. If you look at before and after, the things they had in there were crazy. They had things, levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. They had things in there about, election days and what you do and all sorts of clawbacks. And they had things that were just totally crazy.
Yeah, he says it. He says if you allow that level of voting, Republicans would never win another election. I mean, you don't have to trust us. Trump just said it. You heard it with your own ears. So now back to Waukesha County. So one, you have that general trend that everybody's familiar with. Secondly, in this particular case, Waukesha is a heavily Republican-leaning county, And the Republicans already know that 56% of that county already mailed in their ballots, whereas heavily Democratic leaning Milwaukee, only 38% already mailed in their ballots. So they know if they freeze things right now, the Republicans have a massive unfair advantage. And so they're like, yeah, freeze it. Oh, more Democrats don't get to vote. They're like, where's the question? Of course we don't want them voting. So they don't care about that at all. Their job is they're trying to just take the power away from Democrats. And so that's terrible, but I get the logic of it. Then you go over to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be the judges that fairly rule on these things. And they go, yeah, I don't care about people voting. The law, rules, what's fair, who cares? The Republicans have an advantage. Block the vote. And they all did it, all 5 of them. The so-called, moderate Republicans on the court like Roberts? Hilarious. Of course not. One last thing about the disparities. In Milwaukee, normally they have 180 polling stations. They only have 5 open today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that means they're going to be jam-packed. People aren't going to be able to vote. They're going to wait in lines forever. So you're going to have less Democrats voting. And so if you care about people voting, you'd say, that's crazy. How could you only have 5 in Milwaukee? But if you don't want people to vote, which is the Republican Party, you're thinking this is as good as it gets. And Anna, I'm sorry, one more thing. Democrats care if their voters die. Republicans told them, coronavirus, not that big a deal. Just go out there and vote. Who cares? My power. Me. My power. You go die. It's your problem, not my problem. Democrats have a conscience, and it's a big disadvantage in this case.
I mean, Democrats did insist on continuing some of the primary elections a little late in the game, including the primaries that took place in like Florida and stuff. And so they were really playing with fire there because people, I'm sure, went out there and contracted the virus. But I do want to tell you what's at stake in Wisconsin, because it's not just about the primary election. So, of course, the presidential primaries, they're going to be voting on that. But also there's a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, 3 seats on the Wisconsin Court of Appeals, over 100 other judgeships in the state, and over 500 school board seats. So this is a serious issue because there's a lot at stake. And to know that all these voters have been disenfranchised with the helping hand of the Supreme Court is just devastating. It shows that we have a complete breakdown in our system.
And in fact, the reason they want those judges so badly in the Wisconsin courts to be right-wing is because they're going to do another voter purge, which is not only important for the Republicans in Wisconsin, but they think it could help them win the national presidential election. That is why all the Republicans, including the 5 on the Supreme Court, are saying, oh, yeah, let's get that Republicans elected into the Wisconsin courts, because they got to do another voter purge. And if you have progressive judges, they won't allow you to just unfairly purge voters. So that's all on the line tonight.
All right, so we have another hour open for everyone, even though it's our post-game show. So please check that out next. For everyone else, have a good night and check out our election coverage today. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.